Hello, Tampa Bay fans. You're listening to The William Haynes Show, your online radio home for Tampa Bay sports talk and Rays postgame shows. Stay tuned throughout baseball season for live coverage after most Rays games with comprehensive coverage of all 162 games from April through October. Got something to say? We'd love to hear it. Give us a call, internationally toll-free. 877-566-1020, or send us a tweet at WHBC Official. Don't go anywhere. Tonight's program will be starting in just a couple of minutes.
HBC. The Rays need the vaccine, all right. The vaccine for the injury bug. It is a good evening to you and how you be. William Haynes here, you there, here at 5:14 on this Tuesday evening. I suppose you can call it this Rays pre-game edition of the post-game edition of the William Haynes Show, as we are live, as always, from the WHBC studio in Tallahassee, Florida. A little bit different of a program tonight. Just wanted to shake things up, try something new here in the early goings of the season. Usually we're on right after pretty much every Rays game, and we'll go back to that. We will be on actually in a few hours later tonight. We'll be on the air after tonight's matchup against the Red Sox. It'll be Tyler Glasnow going up against Martin Perez. We have the lineups and all those things to discuss. So in some ways it is kind of a normal show, but in other ways it's a little different. And I guess you could say either it did work out or it really didn't. Just that I think last night's game is one that most Rays fans just want to forget, just want to put behind us. And I'm certainly in line with that. Of course, the Rays losing by a score of 11-2 last night. It was Michael Wacha's first start of 2021 in a Rays uniform. He took the loss in 5 innings pitched, 4 earned runs on 8 hits, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. So pretty much I think we're seeing more of the Michael Wacha that really will be in 2021. I know in his 5 spring training appearances, he only gave up a run total, and here giving up 4 earned runs, 5 total. The error somewhere in there. The Red Sox were getting a ton of men on base, and I know it can play like a small park at times, and it certainly did look that way when the Red Sox were up to bat. But a guy in Michael Wacha that over his career has been susceptible to the home run and puts a lot of pitches over the plate and is susceptible to a lot of contact, and we saw that, of course, anytime you give up 8 hits over the course of 5 innings, that's never a good thing. And also for the second straight game, the Rays give up double-digit runs, 12 to the Marlins in that getaway game, and 11 last night to the Red Sox. So things are going a bit sideways right now. I think things broke well for the Rays in that they will have Tyler Glasnow on the mound, certainly the best pitcher in the rotation. I don't think this is a slump by any means. Of course, the 0-5 road trip to start the season last year, so there was some precedent for maybe some early season struggles, but coming on strong a little bit later, but with the 60 to 162 game season and all the madness that is coming with that, certainly you would like to stockpile some wins early and set yourself up well, so maybe if things go haywire down the line that you would be okay. And not to bury the lead, which I kind of have in this regard, is all the injuries that have occurred for the Rays over the past couple of days or so. So the first one, and probably the more important one, is the Rays placed center fielder Kevin Kiermaier on the 10-day injured list. He injured his left quad running down the line as he was trying to run out a double play in the early goings. That was his first at-bat in the second inning, and the Rays pulled him out. They moved Margot to center field and put Brasso in left. They had to move things around. So it looks like Kiermaier is going to be out for a few weeks, and he's really frustrated. That's from Topkin on Twitter. So he had, I think, some hip issues during spring training, and it seems like he's always got something tweaked or something that needs to heal up. He has been pretty injury prone over his time with the Rays, and of course I don't have to tell you that. So in his place, with the left quad strain, again, 10-day IL, he's going to miss a few weeks. They call up infielder Kevin Padlow, and he is actually in the lineup tonight, looking where he's playing. He is at third base, so I didn't really think coming up from the taxi squad that he was going to be immediately contributing, but the 24-year-old is going to make his major league debut as well. If you recall, a few seasons ago, he came over from Colorado alongside of Corey Dickerson in that trade that sent Jake McGee and Herman Marquez, who is now probably the Rockies' ace. That trade, again, a few seasons ago. So Padlow, not really the gem of that trade, obviously, to get Corey Dickerson, but he has made his way through. I didn't think he was going to be the first of those minor league infielders to make his debut with the Rays. I was thinking probably Taylor Walls, who was the other infielder on the practice squad, and Walls being, I guess, kind of explained as maybe the best defender that the Rays have in their entire organization, not even just an infielder, but he's just terrific. So I thought maybe we would see him first, and I know his bat has been going pretty well, but it looks like Padlow, so obviously they give him the nod, and I think he's probably a little bit better offensively, which makes sense, is that's definitely what the Rays are needing right now, although the defense has been a bit suspect, but I think, defensively they're fine at third base with Wendell and Brasso, and even Yandy Diaz, who is actually in the leadoff spot at first base, is Yandy, and again, we'll talk about that a little later. So Kiermaier goes on the injured list, and that's going to be a bit tricky. They are going to have to navigate some things. It looks like Brett Phillips will be eligible to come off the injured list on Friday for the Rays' opening day game against the New York Yankees. Of course, in spring training, the injury that he suffered was a left hamstring during spring training, so it looks like he's going to be back. And the significance, of course, is he is one of the only players that the Rays have Major League ready that can play center field. As of right now, Manuel Margot is the only one really that can play center field, and it looks like he will be there in center tonight and of course tomorrow. So it's good, I guess, that they only have to cover 2 games with that. And then Brett Phillips, he may be starting in center field on, I guess, the Rays' home opener. It's not really opening day. So that'll be kind of interesting to see with Kiermaier missing some time. There is, of course, an interesting dynamic to that because it's a very small sample size, but Kiermaier has really struggled at the plate so far this season, really has not been productive in any way. He's come up in big situations with men on base, with men in scoring position, and has squandered those opportunities. And although hasn't really messed up, like, say, in Austin Meadows, he hasn't been particularly stellar defensively either. So obviously you hate any time a player goes down, and he's the highest paid player that the Rays have on their payroll this year, so, make of that what you will. But I think this will be an interesting opportunity. I think it's funny. We also said the same thing about Brett Phillips, that would open up some spots for some other people, but now Phillips having to come back with the injury of Kiermaier. So that whole thing, I think, is very interesting. And in that kind of string of transactions, the Rays also claimed catchy Davy Grione off waivers from the Reds. And as we shift over to the next really move that was made to make room for Grione on the 40-man roster, they shifted Chaz Rowe, who was on the 10-day injured list, to the 60-day injured list. Chaz Rowe, they end up shutting him down with a right shoulder strain. They're they're going to shut him down from throwing for 6 weeks, and it looks like because of that he may miss up to 12 weeks. It looks to me that that's just something that he just maybe is a little bit fatigued or whatever the case, and he just needs time to rest up. And then, of course, after that, he's going to have to get ramped back up, to playing games and those things. We know he had that, what the Rays call a cranky shoulder. And when that was happening, I was here on the show, and I'm like, what does that mean, a cranky shoulder? And there was some question marks around that. And I think he's pitched fine in the early goings, but you could tell maybe something wasn't exactly right. And it looks like that right shoulder issue continued to linger. He pitched on Friday facing 4 men. He struck out the first 2, but then, of course, allowed the triple and then a walk. And then Kevin Cash said road didn't quite feel right on Saturday, reported some pain on Sunday. And then he saw a doctor Monday in Boston, and so they came to the conclusion to shut him down. Cash said he's going to miss a fairly significant time, and I guess the unofficial number, as I mentioned, is going to be 12 weeks. So in his place, basically, they promoted Chris Mazza, the right-hander, the 31-year-old pitcher, from the taxi squad. I wasn't even aware that he was on the taxi squad. I thought David Hess was the only pitcher, but Mazza was on there as well. Maybe that was part of the squad that they brought to Boston. So now that the bullpen really is getting to a point where it's depleted. We're only, 4 games into the season, and we're essentially down at this point, 3 or 4 arms, because Nick Anderson going down in spring training, Ryan Sheriff stepping away from the team for personal reasons, and now Chaz Rowe. So things are not necessarily beginning to fall apart, but as we've seen, basically the starting rotation a full time through with Rich Hill and Chris Archer pitching on the same day. So we've seen all 5 of the starters over the course of the first 4 games. And I would say after Tyler Glasnow and Ryan Yarbrough, there is it's a significant drop-off, at least as of right now. Rich Hill and Michael Wacha, it looks like they're certainly going to suffer at times, struggling to get people out. A lot of contact made off of both of those pitchers. Chris Archer, I think you just kind of throw that first appearance out of the window. It was clear that he was not really right. I think coming in, late in a game like that just kind of messed with him. So hopefully he'll be able to come on strong, and they may need Archer to do some significant lifting there as the 3 starter, because now I don't know exactly how you would line up the rotation if you had to, say you had the chance to do it again. Obviously, Glasnow with your ace. It's clear Yarbrough is due for another pretty good season, and then after that, the 3, 4, and 5 spots are up for grabs and kind of iffy as of right now. And the meaning of saying all that is just to say that the Rays are going to have to lean on their bullpen as they usually do, but during that process, guys are going to go down. Guys have already gone down, and you're going to have guys that typically would not be pitching high-leverage situations doing so. I think Cody Reed could be a big X factor. He has yet to make his season debut. I think we may maybe see him tonight. You would think certainly everyone is willing to go after Mazza and Springs basically were assigned mop-up duty after the game was pretty much out of reach after Michael Wacha left the game after 5 innings. So you look at the landscape of the bullpen the way it sits now. Diego Castillo is probably your closer, or your highest leverage guy, whatever it is that you want, the term that you want to use to define his role. Pete Fairbanks is probably his number 2, his setup man, etc. And it's good that you still have those 2. And then after that, you're looking at, later game, but not necessarily closer type guys. Cody Reed is in there. Ryan Thompson, who has looked a bit iffy in a couple appearances. I think he's still good, but maybe not as automatic or close to it as he was a season ago. So those guys are being thrust into bigger roles. Andrew Kittredge, another guy as well, who in his season debut I thought looked fairly poor. He actually did get the win in Game 2 in his inning of work, gave up a run on 2 hits and a walk, so giving up 3 base runners is not great. So he's going to be pitching in some bigger spots. Colin McHugh, who I think is kind of a swing man, he's going to have to pitch more innings. So not to go down the line, but guys that as Rays fans and maybe even Rays staff are not necessarily desiring to have in these big situations, but because of circumstance, they're going to have to do so. So I just think that's going to be interesting to watch. And as this team looks to get their feet under them, obviously going through that process, you want to look to your strengths. Well, what is the strength of this team right now? Typically, as an organization, their strength is pitching and defense, and again, the small sample size, but that really has not been bearing out, giving up double-digit runs in back-to-back games. That's certainly not going to continue, but there's certainly not, at least right now, a ton of light at the end of the tunnel, just because there's some question marks around the back end of your starting rotation. There's certainly issues with the bullpen as far as the depth already being depleted, and the offense that we had expected to basically be reverting back to their 2019 form that was able to kind of carry the team at times, that certainly has not been bearing out either. Guys like Austin Meadows, who we expected to make a big return. Yes, he did have the home runs back-to-back in the first two games, but you look at his game last night, he goes 0 for 5 with a couple strikeouts, and he's looked very poor. Defensively, Yoshi Tsutsugo, he's batting .077 right now, just got his first hit last night. Kevin Kiermaier, who's now missing some time, he's been poor with the bat. Adames got his first extra base hit last night and is batting under 200 currently. So those guys that you kind of turn to, in that offense to try and get some runs, they have not been coming through. Thankfully, you still have guys like a Rosarena. Brandon Lau has gotten off to a nice start, and that's pivotal. Manuel Margot, it looks like he's going to be another big offensive piece. So there are guys, but 3 guys in a lineup is typically not enough to get it done. This isn't going to be a whole season of the 2020 playoffs where Randy Rosarena is basically putting an entire team on his back, as good as he's been to start the year. And talk about bearing the lead, the shades of Air Jordan diving out there, soaring through the air in right field to catch that line out. That was really impressive, and probably will be one of the highlights of the season, at least the first half or the early goings or whatever. That was really the only bright spot, if you look close enough in last night's game, was that diving catch. So that's where we are with the team right now. I think, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, this is a good chance to, because this isn't a slump. You lose back-to-back games and you get really blown out. I don't really see that as anything. Technically it is a losing streak. Yes, lost 2 games, but you have a chance to really put that behind you and get things turned back in the right direction. Although I will say, if they are not able to secure a victory tonight with Tyler Glasnow on the mound, say he pitches really well and maybe the bullpen blows it or the offense can't give him run support, that's definitely going to bring some negative momentum. So I think this is a pretty big game. And I think at this point now, what we'll do, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll touch a little more on last night's loss and then preview tonight's game and then get up on out of here. It's going to be, I think, a little bit of a shorter program tonight. If we have anyone who's listening and wants to call in, talk Rays, you can certainly do so. The number to call is 877-566-1020. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a minute.
Hey Rays fans, William will be right back. We're in a commercial break, so don't touch that dial. Remember, you can call us internationally toll-free at 877-566-1020 or tweet us your thoughts at WHBC Official. Also, we'd like you to stay tuned for William's other podcasting projects at speaker.com/user/WHBC.
HBC. And at 5:31, we are back on the William Haynes Show. Again, number to call the show is 877-566-1020 as we continue talking last night's loss and getting you ready for tonight's game. It'll be Glasnow against Martin Perez. Over the break, just checking up on Mark Tompkins' Twitter. We got a couple of things. Cody Reed not pitching yet, but Kevin Cash said he's, quote, fine, will be there soon and will, quote, play a big role. I know we've expected that. There's been talk in spring training about him being a multi-inning weapon as opposed to just a left-handed specialist, so to speak, as now the Rays really don't have any unless you count Jeffrey Springs in that regard, and I'm not necessarily sure if that's his role. And then Cash said his pitching plans for the Yankee series that starts Friday aren't completely set, but he expects Rich Hill and Chris Archer to start the first two games, and Michael Wacha likely to pitch on Sunday, possibly behind an opener. I don't want to get there yet, the Yankee series, because that is a little bit ways away. Obviously, we have 2 games and 3 days total before we get to that series. But the way that pitching rotation lines up is certainly concerning. The last thing you want to do is to have your home opening series, have your biggest rival come into town and beat down on you and take an early lead in the American League East because your starting pitching was no good. All of those guys, Rich Hill, Archer, and Michael Wacha. I would definitely like to see Wacha behind an opener, like maybe get 2 out of Reed and then see if you can get 3 or 4 from Wacha, whatever. Because the way he looked against Boston last night, I couldn't even imagine seeing the Yankees against those guys. So, cross that bridge when you get to it, but something down the line that I'm not necessarily looking forward to. I can't wait to watch the games and go to them. The first Rays games that fans can go to since the ALDS in 2019. It's hard to believe it's been that long, so that'll be good certainly. But if it's a sweep or the Yankees take 2 out of 3, that's going to be a disappointing sight to say the least. But now getting back to last night's loss, and we'll try and put a bow on that relatively quickly so we can just put it behind us. So the way that they lined up defensively first, it was a Rosarena in left, Kiermaier in center, and it was Manuel Margot in right. Obviously, when Kiermaier went out in the second inning, they had to make some changes. So Randy moved from left to right, Margot moved from right to center, and then they put in Mike Brasso to play left field. And then defensively across the infield from third to first, it was Joy Wendell at third, Adames at short, Brandon Lau at second, and Yoshi at first, kind of their traditional infield, at least for right now. Mike Zunino was catching, and Austin Meadows was the DH. And then the way the lineup was structured, Yoshi leading off, Meadows 2, a Rosarena 3, Lau cleaning up, Margot 5, Wendell 6, Adames 7, Kiermaier / Brasso basically 8, and then Mike Zunino in the 9 hole. And I thought that lineup, the way it was structured, I think was fine. Yoshi's going to continue to lead off. He, I don't know if going 1 for 5 with a strikeout is doing yourself a favor, but at least getting his first hit of the season and hopefully can gain some positive momentum in that regard, because if you're going to be leading off, certainly you need to produce. Taking a look at his first at-bat of the game, he grounded out to shortstop in a 6-pitch at-bat, so, I'm fine with that. You love for the leadoff guy to get on base in the first inning, and hopefully he can come around to score, but, that's not going to obviously happen all the time, so I would just like him to, or whoever's hitting leadoff, to see pitches, and I think Yoshi and Austin Meadows have done a pretty good job of that in their opportunities. And then looking, and he was fine, I think, defensively at first base. Going down to 2, Austin Meadows DHing. Obviously, they wanted to get him out of the field after the nightmares basically he had in right field in Lone Depot Park against the Marlins, especially Game 3. With they weren't all errors, but there was 3 misplays at the least out there, and I think he's going to be primarily used as a DH. Cash had, basically talked about how glad he was to have the DH back because the Rays are certainly not built to be a National League team without the DH, so getting that back, I think, is going to help some things. He goes 0 for 5 with 2 strikeouts. Not great. I had trouble, I think, seeing some pitches, and something I should have mentioned earlier in the show, but I'm sure, watching the game, you saw it. in Fenway Park, obviously in April, it's going to be strange. It was really cold. It was very windy. We saw the catchers were having some hard times corralling the baseball, things of that nature. So this game really could just be chalked up to that, and I think that's a valid thing to say and a point to make. So keep that all in mind. But Austin Meadows, those are games at the top of the order, and especially DHing. That's the only way you're contributing to the team on that given night. You can't be going 0 for 5 with 2 strikeouts. That's certainly not a good thing to see. He came up once with runners in scoring position, so 0 for 1 in that regard. So, not great there. Batting third, Randy Arozarena. He's carrying the team certainly right now on the offensive side and defensively even, it seems like, as well, with that insane grab. He went 2 for 3 with a walk. So basically in 4 plate appearances, reaching base 3 times, an on-base percentage of .750. You like to see that. His only out was a strikeout, but he was certainly contributing. He's going to be a mainstay at the top of the order and would love to see him continue that. Brandon Lau at the cleanup spot was 2 for 3 with a walk, so he was certainly productive as well. Another guy, getting on base 75% of the time. He was the only guy who came through with runners in scoring position, going 1 for 1. The team total was 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position and left a total of 9 men on base. And that's another thing that I could have led the show with, and that whenever the offense was struggling really last year, that was the only stat. As soon as, if you didn't watch the game and you saw they lost and you want to go to the box score to see what happened, the first thing you do is you look at runners in scoring position and left on base, because if the Rays lost, and even when they win, more times than not, that is a glaring thing that they're failing at. And I don't know exactly how that changes. I know being clutch is something that sabermetricians aren't a fan of because it's hard to quantify. Really, that's the only way you can quantify it is what's their batting average or slugging OPS with men on base or in scoring position. And obviously, it's not really any different than any other situation you come up to the plate, but it's just, are you coming through in big moments? And so far, really the only instance of that we've seen was those 2 Austin Meadows home runs in Miami, and then also that 3-run Wendell home run, which you like to see the homers, but you don't want to be over dependent on the long ball. I know the Rays have been zigging when the rest of the league is zagging in that regard as offenses shift to the 3 true outcomes and the home run. And we'd like to see the Rays play a little bit more small ball, but you don't complain about power. Certainly when it comes, it's a good thing to see. So Brandon Lau off to a nice start. Arozarena and Lau are both batting .364 and an OBP over 400. I know, they've played, each of them have played, 3 games, but good to see them get off to a good start. Batting fifth, Manuel Margot was 1 for 3 with a walk. That was a bases-loaded walk that earned him an RBI and then 2 strikeouts. So a fine game in that regard. The team walked a total of 6 times, which is good. They struck out 8 times, which isn't horrible either. I think they could have walked maybe more. There was a lot of just really easy takes here tonight. The starter, Nick Pivetta, 5 innings, 92 pitches, only 52 strikes, so a little less than basically half of his pitches were for balls. So, and then really anyone that came in after him, Matt Andriese, Darwinson Hernandez, anyone else, they were having difficulty throwing strikes. So obviously they could have had a lot more than 2 runs, and they were getting men on base consistently and just obviously not able to come through with those guys on base. Wendell 0 for 3, and then he got pinch hit for in the 8th for Yandy Diaz, who earned himself an RBI walk. Damas 1 for 3 with a walk and a strikeout. With what he gives you defensively, 1 for 3 with a walk, you'll definitely take that. Mike Brasso coming in for Kiermaier was 0 for 3 with a strikeout. I think just a strange game for him. I don't think he was expecting to get in that spot. Also playing the outfield and, because of the Kiermaier injury. So that's fine. And then Zunino goes 0 for 2 with a walk, and then Jeffrey Odom pinch hit for him, and the late goings as well. I guess the Rays and Kevin Cash had talked about getting both Zunino and Francisco Mejia, both, guys that play catcher, into the lineup, obviously having one of them at the DH spot. And They're actually going to do that tonight, it looks like, with Mejia being the DH and Zunino catching. That's obviously how you would want to do that. I think Mejia's bat has looked good. He's been able to contribute, a sacrifice bunt. He's also walked in some big spots. I think he only started one game, so he'll actually DH and bat 7, so that'll be interesting to see how that goes. But getting back to last night's game, now the pitching staff, and I know we've already talked about this quite a bit, but Michael Wacha, the starter, getting the loss, 5 innings, 4 runs on 8 hits, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts, 90 pitches, only 65 for strikes. His scouting profile, basically fastball at low 90s, cutter at high 80s, and a changeup at high 80s as well, and then kind of a changeup, or rather a curveball that he threw a couple times. So he's got a decent mix, but catches a lot of the plate, is all over the zone, and you face a lineup like Boston or New York or Toronto, all those AL East teams are, Houston, the Dodgers, any big lineup like that loves to swing the bat. You're going to have to be careful with Wacha. I think that's where you're going to see openers. I think that might have benefited him to have an opener last night. But with it being his first start of the year, and I guess you want him to be stretched out, certainly, so they just let him go the 5 innings, 90 pitches. I guess in that regard, he could have gone maybe even more if he's ready to do 100 pitches plus. But so honestly, with all the base runners that he had a total of 10 base runners, 8 hits and 2 walks over 5 innings, and he's able to get through 90 pitches. That's not terrible. He faced 24 men, threw for a first pitch strike to 16 of them, so 2 for 3 as far as establishing the first pitch strike. Not something that you would complain about, but again, that stat is not necessarily going to be a tell-all for Wacha. Just because his pitches are strikes, that could also mean that those pitches are getting crushed. It's not all about throwing strikes; it's where the strikes are placed. Certainly, we see that all the time. And Wacha gets the loss. I think right now, he would probably be, your 5 starter as far as, traditionally looking at, all right, our 5 starters on the mound if we're going to win. Our bullpen's got to be great. Offense has got to be great. You're not going to win because of Wacha. You may win in spite of him. But I think maybe Michael Wacha and Rich Hill will maybe be fighting for that 5 spot. I don't know. And maybe even Archer if he struggles. So coming in after him was the in mop-up duty, the 2 guys that came over from Boston. Kind of funny how that worked out. Chris Mazza pitching 2 2/3 in his Rays debut off the taxi squad after the injury of Chaz Rowe. Goes 2 2/3, 6 runs on 7 hits. So he got beat up pretty bad as well. 1 walk, 2 strikeouts. He threw 61 pitches, only 36 for strikes. So, only half of them being thrown for strikes, that's not necessarily a good thing. Was 10 for 15 as far as establishing the first pitch strike, which is not bad either. To me, I think he said he was built up for like 50 to 60 pitches, which, he threw 61. I thought in spring training they were saying he was one of the guys they wanted to stretch out to 75 pitches, so maybe that's still in the works, and I certainly don't think he was expecting to see the field this early. To me, looks like a kind of guy, 31-year-old right-hander, to me is kind of like a guy that can give you length, but more so in mop-up duty. I was not really blown away with anything that I was doing. A sidewinder guy, all his pitches had movement, but I don't know. I don't want to bash the guy in a cold, windy Boston night, for his first bad appearance, but nothing certainly too special. And then Jeffrey Springs just came in basically and got the final out of the ball game, and he's fine. I think right now, if Cody Reed is going to be a guy that doesn't matter righties or lefties, Jeffrey Springs might be that guy right now, replacing Sheriff as the left-handed specialist in the bullpen. So it'll be important to kind of watch his progression over the course of the season. So that's about all I can say about that. It was a bad game. Certainly look forward to putting that behind us. And it's nice. The game first pitch is in about an hour and a half, so that's kind of exciting. This is different doing this show in kind of a pregame format. So now we officially turn over to our pregame coverage. 7:10 p.m. Rays, Red Sox in Boston. It is Tyler Glasnow, the righty, going up against Martin Perez, the left-hander. Glasnow, of course, in his second time through the rotation. Perez making his first start of the year. So the lineup that the Rays will trot out against Perez. So we'll give you the defensive alignment first. Certainly changing some things up. It's going to be Brandon Lowe in left field. It will be Manuel Margot in center, Randy Arozarena back in right, where he made that outstanding catch last night. And then in the infield, from third to first, making his Rays debut, major league debut, whatever you want to say, Kevin Padlo. So that'll be interesting to see him. I think he's more valuable maybe with the bat than with the glove, but I haven't really seen the guy play. I know he got some action in spring training, so we anxiously await his debut. And then at shortstop, of course, the mainstay there, Willy Adames, Mike Brasso at second base, and then Yandy Diaz will play first. Now, again, they are going, the two catchers, basically, Francisco Mejia is going to DH, and then Zunino will catch at the bottom of the lineup. And then the way that the hitters will come up, it is Yandy Diaz leading off for the first time this year. I think that'll be interesting. Let's just give it to you first, and then we'll give you the commentary. So Yandy leading off, then Arozarena at 2, Brasso up at 3, Margot hitting cleanup, Brandon Lowe 5, Adames 6, Mejia 7, Padlo 8th, and Zunino 9th. I think this is an interesting lineup for multiple reasons. Against the lefty Perez, I understand you want to stack the righties. They've got Yandy 1, Arozarena 2, Brasso 3, Margot 4, Adames 5, Padlo 6, and Zunino 7. So they've got 7 righties with 1 switch hitter. The only lefty in there, and of course you just have to have him in the lineup basically every night if he's healthy, is Brandon Lowe. So they are going to go heavy with the righty-lefty advantage, and understand that is the opportunity that you would take to give Austin Meadows a day off. So with him out, with Yoshi being out of the lineup as he's a left-handed bat who bats leadoff. So they go to Yandy Diaz. I think he's really the only clear option. Manny Margot maybe would be another guy. Francisco Mejia might be even interesting to watch leadoff. I would just kind of like to see that. But Yandy, I think, makes the most sense. He's been great the past couple seasons at seeing pitches. I think he's got a pretty good idea of the zone. And he comes up to the plate wanting to take pitches. He wants to wait for his pitch. He doesn't want to, come up and swing at everything. So I think that we'll see maybe a good lengthy at bat, maybe fouls off some pitches, gets the lefty on righty advantage there. Randy Arozarena, that totally makes sense, having him bat second. Moving Brasso up to third, I think is kind of interesting. I like him more at the bottom. He's batted 8th a couple times. I kind of like him in that spot, but they want to move him up to 3. That's fine. He's 1 for 7 so far this year. Having Margot back cleanup instead of Lau is a bit just kind of surprising to me. I know Margot batted cleanup in the playoffs a few times, and he's 5 for 13 with 3 runs batted in, and obviously picking up his first home run. So he's been off to a good start, but also so is Brandon Lowe. I think Brandon Lowe really should be kind of your everyday cleanup hitter, but only one spot lower at 5, and who knows at what times those opportunities are coming up. And then the bottom of the lineup is fine. Adames is going to bat 6. 6, 7, 8 is where he'll be this year. I think that's kind of where Adames will cap out, if we're being honest. He's never going to be a top of the order guy. Mejia 7, I think that's interesting. He could get on base with a walk or whatever. Padlo 8, that's fine, making his debut. We don't know exactly what we're going to get, but he gets the righty-lefty, and then Zunino, of course, batting 9th. I think that's where that's fine. I sometimes like getting a guy who can get on base 9 to turn the lineup over, but I think with the guys that you have in the lineup tonight, just stick him in the 9th spot, and you get whatever you get from him, and that will be that. So now, and again, just if we have anyone listening, you want to call in, you want to talk Rays, 877-566-1020. But if not, basically the only thing that we have left to discuss is the starting pitching matchup, and then we'll get you on out of here. It'll be Tyler Glasnow, of course, against Martin Perez. I've said it, 50 times probably already, but Glasnow on the season, no decisions for him, and triple zeros in the earned run average category. His first start on opening day this year in Miami. 6 innings of 1 hit ball, no walks, so only 1 base runner, and it was a weak grounder right to him, I think, that he could have even got the out on. So we're almost 6 no-hit innings, 6 perfect innings as well. Through 77 pitches, he was absolutely stellar. Nothing more to be said about that. I think he's going to be terrific here tonight. I don't know how bad the weather is, but the hope is that he's going to get you some innings and without any runs, so that the offense doesn't have to score 10 or 11 runs to win. And then he had one start against the Red Sox last year. It looks like he went 4 innings, 8 hits, 5 runs, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts. So not a great start for him. I'm surprised he only faced them once last year. Looking at the Boston lineup, how they've done against Glasnow, most of the guys have struggled. Bogarts is 1 for 10, Devers 3 for 12. The only guy that's really had a lot of success historically against Glasnow is JD Martinez, who is 3 for 9 with a home run. So, of course, he's good about just about anyone, even at this point in his career. But good to see that, the mainstays in Bogarts and Devers and, all those characters are typically not been great against Glasnow. And then looking at Martin Perez, the 30-year-old left-hander making his first start. Last season, he went 3-5 with a .450 earned run average. Faced the Rays 3 times last year. Faced them back-to-back in August at Tropicana Field, 5 innings, no runs on 4 hits. Then his next time through the rotation in Boston, 5 2/3, 2 runs on 3 hits. And then on September 13th, back at the Trop, 5 innings of 2 runs and 5 hits. So that's pretty much the pattern. I always say look for patterns. What will he get? What will he give the Sox? Maybe 5 innings, 2 runs. I would say that's pretty safe to say. Although I think this is not necessarily boom or bust, but there is certainly some really nice potential. If things are rolling, I think there will really be rolling. And I don't think this lineup will just be completely horrible tonight. I think they've got guys 1 through 9 that are capable of being a threat at any time in the game, and I like the way it's structured. I think there's some interesting storybook potential for Kevin Padlow. I haven't discussed it a lot, but if you've got access to the Tampa Bay Times, definitely check out some of that stuff. He's had struggles with mental health. He's had what they called like chronic headaches that they couldn't solve, and that's something he's been struggling with throughout his career. So a really interesting story. Look forward to seeing him play. And then really the last thing, the Rays lineup career against Martin Perez, not a ton of good stuff. Yandy, and this makes a ton of sense why he's hitting leadoff, is 5 for 15 with a couple of runs batted in. Brasso's 4 for 10, that's nice. But then everyone else is a bit iffy. Margot 0 for 8, Adames 2 for 10, and Zunino 6 for 22. So, but actually 6 of his hits, 3 for home runs, 10 strikeouts. So, maybe a potential for Zunino bomb number 2 of the year. That would be kind of cool to see. So, look forward to seeing that. This is going to be a bit different for me. We are going to be on after the game, so 10:30ish, maybe closer to 11 o'clock. We will be back on the air, taking your phone calls, talking Rays. Hopefully, it's a win. So yeah, thanks to everyone for checking out the show. I know it was a bit different. I know it's a game that maybe you didn't want to have to relive last night's loss, but I just wanted to get my thoughts out there. It's going to be interesting for the Rays navigating this thing with the injury bug that has certainly taken hold of this roster. Hopefully the new faces that have come up can contribute and be good, but we look forward to seeing that. Hopefully Glasnow dominates, maybe get a Cy Young campaign started. He's the ace of the team. Hopefully the Rays win. We'll talk to you soon.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM and Sports Radio 66. The Fan.
HBC